Welcome, everyone. This is actually the very first Key Conversations with Amanda Goff. I'm so glad that you are tuning in and watching this. I'm so excited to start bringing a video interview style type resource that I can provide to all of you out there that are business owners, business professionals, and just, everyday people. I learn about so many amazing things from the people that I network with. And this is a way that I can share that. So my very first guest is Cecilia Case. She is a money coach or a money relationship coach. And this is right around tax season, so a really good time to be thinking about money and thinking about our relationship with that. So Cecilia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for having me on. This is really fantastic. And I'm so honored to be your first guest. That's really fun. I am, like you said, I'm a money coach, and I like to help people get and stay out of debt and learn to have a really good relationship with money and sort of spend according to their values. And so I do this because I think that money is so important in our lives. It has its root and its tendrils into almost every aspect of our lives are affected by money. And I personally have my own money journey, my own money story. And as I evolved through that and grew through that, I realized that I wanted to share with others. I wanted to help others create a good relationship with money. So, yeah.
And
I was
gonna say, how did you get started in this? That's kind of, it's very niche.
It is a little bit niche. Yeah, absolutely. It is, because I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not handling people's investments or doing life insurance or anything like that. This is definitely something that's a little bit different. And I came to it because my personal money story is probably pretty similar to what other people have. Or at least I'm sure everyone has some sort of, they can see bits of themselves in my story and me and them. And my money story is that I grew up I grew up in a middle-class family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad was an engineer, still is an engineer. And so he had a very stable, fairly stable income and was rarely unemployed. And that would make you think that we would have a very stable money situation, financial situation. And it wasn't true. I grew up in a situation of what I now call the debt yo-yo, right? So the whole family, we get into debt, and then we kind of crawl our way out of debt. And we'd have like a celebratory dinner, and be like, yes, we're out of debt. We're never going to do that again. And then turn around 9 months later, a year later, and realize we were getting ourselves back into debt again, And as a child, that's what I saw. I saw this debt yo-yo. And I didn't necessarily understand why it was happening. But I grew up with a money story that money is scary. And that it causes upheaval in your life or, uncertainty in your life. And so when I became my own adult and I got my own jobs and, all of this sort of thing, financial security and safety was really important to me. It was one of my highest sort of goals was to be financially secure. So if I had two choices in my life, one that would make me happy but was risky, and one that was make me less happy but was financially stable, I would always choose the financially stable choice, And even through that, though, I would go into these debt yo-yos. I would do the exact same thing. I emulated my parents. I emulated my dad. I became an engineer, and yeah, right. And which is a very stable job, so I did that right. But at the same time, I found myself always getting into debt, student loan debt, credit card debt, car loans, never a huge amount, but enough that it was always a stress in my life. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, I realized I can't do this anymore. I don't like this, living like this. And I really buckled down, and I realized that I was going to have to make some real changes in my life. And so I did the usual, like, typing on the keyboard, Googling how the heck do I get myself out of debt? And I ran across, right? Everyone does that. Every 6 months I would do that. I'd be like, how the heck do I get out of debt?
What do I do? Exactly.
And I did that. And this time, a budgeting program came up called YNAB, which is YNAB, and it stands for You Need a Budget.
Oh, yeah.
And this program still exists. I still use it daily, and it changed everything for me. I downloaded it at the time you downloaded it. Now it's a web app, but I downloaded it, and within 30 minutes, I knew that it was going to change everything for me. It just was such an amazing way of looking at money. And so over the period of 3 years, I paid off my debt. And ever since then, I've never been in debt unless I had a reason to be in debt. Like I bought a boat with debt, but I paid it off really, really quickly.
Sure.
And it was sort of a strategic decision. And I had a house with a mortgage, but consumer debt was gone, student loan was gone, car loans were gone. And I realized not only had I paid off all of these debts, but I had the skills and new relationship with my money that I didn't have to ever get back into debt again. That I knew how to keep out of that careless debt yo-yo cycle that I'd been in. And so that's when I started realizing, wow, it's not just the budgeting. I have a real total system here that I would love to share with the world.
Wonderful. And it's so true. You said that, we all have our money journey. We all carry baggage from how we were raised and whether we react to how we were raised, swinging the pendulum one way or the other.
Right.
But yeah, debt is so easy to attain.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, with school loans and then a mortgage, but then you've got the car and then you've got to take care of the car.
Right. We could go down a total rabbit hole of, how attitudes have changed over the past 30 or 50 years in terms of debt and consumer debt, especially. There's a lot of societal changes that have happened. But for me, it's more about changing one person's relationship with money. We all have, you're absolutely right. Everyone has a different money story. It's different for everyone, but there's some common threads. Usually you can find something that's very similar. So, excuse me. So that's why I love what I do. That's why I love it, is because I can really help people heal one person at a time, heal that relationship with money. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, so tell us, I know we chatted ahead of time. Tell us some real applicable things that you think are really important. I know it doesn't necessarily always apply to just a business owner or a business entrepreneur, but that's definitely a lot of the people that are going to be tuning in.
Sure.
Maybe those key things that you think are a good takeaway that could be applied pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's my general, I don't like calling it a system, but it kind of is a system a bit. It's not a rigid system, though. It's more of a philosophy. There we go. That's the word I want. It's a philosophy of having a healthy relationship with money. And I call them the 3 pillars to a healthy relationship with money. And you're absolutely right. This is for everyone. It's not just business owners. And we can talk a little bit about the special requirements for small business owners afterwards. But for these 3 things, this is for everyone. The first pillar is to having a good relationship with money is understanding your emotional money story and rewriting the ones that aren't serving you. Right? It's not about necessarily rejecting those stories. It's about understanding them, understanding why you wrote those stories in the first place, because usually they're coping mechanisms, right? You create these money stories in your head and you find the ones that aren't working for you and rewrite them. Find a new money story to replace them. And what I mean by a money story is things like, it can be as general and broad as, rich people are greedy, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Saying something like that in the back of your head, having that run in the back of your head will make it very hard for you to gather a lot of wealth. Because if you're a good person, and most people are good people, who wants to be greedy?
Yeah.
Who wants to be a bad person? So if you think rich people are greedy, you're gonna subconsciously subvert your ability to gather real wealth. Right. So that's just one example, and there are hundreds of examples. Mm-hmm. For me, my money story was about the fear of instability. Mm-hmm. That there was a certain way of getting money, and that everything I needed to do was to avoid instability, right, and not take risks. So everyone has a different money story, but that's the first pillar. Understand those and rewrite the ones that aren't serving you. The second pillar is the practical techniques of managing your money. And that's what you often will see if you kind of Google personal finance blogs and things like that. These are the kinds of things that you'll see them talking about. You'll see how to create a debt reduction plan, or how to learn how to save, or how to create a budget, right? But mm-hmm. those are super, super important. But without that first pillar, you're not really going to revolutionize your relationship with money. Sure. So those are very important, but the first pillar is vital to really changing how you interact with those tools. Mm. It's like buying a really, really nice, beautiful $200 chef knife, but not knowing how to chop with it. And not you've got this great tool, right? But you don't really know how to use it. So you have to have both. And then the third pillar is what I like to call creating your new money groove. And really basically what I'm saying is creating new money habits. And new money habits are very, very important, because even if you have changed your relationship with money and you have practical techniques, if you don't do them over the long term, you won't have long-term changes in your money situation. Right? So you need to have all three of them. And with the habits, I like to tell people, I want the habits. It's very important that the habits get to the point where they're almost second nature, right? They mm-hmm. need to be as second nature as getting up, going into the bathroom, and brushing your teeth.
Yeah, totally.
Right? You just do it. You just do it because you do it. You don't have to argue with yourself about it. You don't have to have a conversation with yourself about it. You get up, you go, you brush your teeth. I want it to be that easy.
Yeah, because what do we do when we're stressed out? We go to our natural habits. And if we have bad habits, it's like, I mean, that's why the whole retail therapy, which is the worst. Yeah. No retail therapy, people. No. You're just
exactly. Yeah, and that's why it's also important to understand those old money stories, because when you start skipping into that old money groove, that often is related to the old money story that you have somewhere in there. Shopping will make me feel better. Mm-hmm. That sort of thing. That might be an old story, or it might be different than that, but that might be a kind of story that is triggering that. And so when you realize that you're skipping into that old groove, you can look back and say, oh, wow, there's that old story again. What did I replace that with? What's the new story that I wrote for myself? And you can consciously replace it again. And every time you do that, it'll be faster. You'll recognize it faster. You'll remember the new story faster. It'll be more effective faster, So that's the three things that I think are so, so important for everyone to be able to do.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, this applies to anyone and everyone, which is we all need to kind of go through those 3 steps for sure. And, it's just a starting point, I'm assuming, but it's when you can kind of start streamlining that, then you really start to set a new pattern, which I think, we all have that. How do you think, we'll loop back to, how is this applicable then in business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for example, things like budgets are already hard because every month is different with your expenses, right? Mm-hmm. And that's for everyone. Even if you have a regular paycheck, your expenses will be different month to month. No one has this thing called a normal month, right? Where it's everything happens exactly how they're supposed to, right? For small business owners, they have, we have a really even more complicated situation, because not only do we not know exactly what our expenses are going to be, but we don't know exactly what our income is going to be either in a lot of cases. So that's what I call variable income. And variable income it just makes it even harder to predict and to make good choices and to always know. For example, if you have a highly variable income, let's say a real estate agent, that's very seasonal, right? You might have 3 really amazing months, and the rest of the months you might have no sales at all, or just, very low sales. So in those 3 months, you need to have a plan to sock away money so that you will be able to use that savings for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Right. So I like to talk about turning your variable income into stable income. Right. And it's easy to talk about. It's hard to do. It's hard for everyone. Right. It's like, oh, well, you just figure out what your average is. You figure out what your expenses are going to be. And well, that's how much you need to make. Well, no, that's silly. It's much harder than that. But basically, the first step is to start creating a buffer. So start creating, and this can be in a savings account. This can be, it can be done a lot of different ways. But what you start doing is you start every month that you have a high income, you're going to stuff money into the buffer. When you have low income, you're going to pull from the buffer. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to stabilize that variable income, right? Sure. Yeah. So and then when you do that, then you're going to apply all 3 of those other, pillars at the same time. Right. Yeah. So it's basically me saying it's even harder for small business owners.
Right.
Really, really tough,
Yeah. Because even if you have, I know for myself, I have some clients that are monthly, so I can kind of predict, okay, I'm going to make X amount per month. Right. But then I don't know where, like, the ebb and flow of projects and when payments come. So even that, because then you have that one client is like, oh, I need to pause on this for a month or 2, and because they have the same ebb and flow. Especially a business to business type small business is like it's like a powder keg. To some degree. So where should people start, like, out of the gate? What do you think would be the first step, like, after listening to this, that they go, okay, I can put this down, I can set aside an hour to try and think about this, or an hour to think and do this?
I like to suggest 2 things, actually. And the first one is creating what I call an emotions and spending journal. Okay. What this is really simple. Just take a sheet of paper or a notebook or whatever you like, and create a little grid or little table, and put down at the top, you'll have where you spent the money, what you spent the money on, how much it was, and how did it make you feel? Now, you don't have to do this for every expense. If you go to Target and you buy, some little thing that you just needed and you don't have any emotions about it, it was just, I don't know, you bought a little bit of groceries or something like that and it didn't have any emotional impact, don't worry about putting that down in your journal. But if you have something where you go and you buy some clothing or whatever it is, if you have some emotional feelings about it, write it down, because that's how you're going to start digging into those money stories, how you're going to start identifying the patterns, saying, oh, wow, you know what? I bought this shirt and I did it because someone said something that made me feel bad about myself at work. And so, again, you're talking about retail therapy, right? Or something like that. You start writing it down and you start realizing that there's some patterns to the things that really bring strong emotions. Now, it's not just the negative emotions that I want people to write down. It's the positive ones. Sure. Sometimes we buy something and we feel really good about it. For example, maybe if you buy something, you've been putting it off for months that you have to repair this thing in your house. And you finally buy the parts to make it happen. And you feel really good because you feel really adult and really accomplished, right?
Yes.
Write it down, right? Write it down and say, wow, this made me feel good because I felt like I was taking care of myself and taking care of my family or whatever it was, right? So that's the first thing I want people to try. It really can start, you can start digging into those money stories. The second thing is for the business owners is to really start looking at the true ebb and flow of their business, right? Figure out what those highs are, figure out what the lows are, figure out what your expenses are-ish. Again, you can never really know. And realize that, okay, yeah, I need to save this much money so that in my low months, I don't have to dip into debt, right? That's going to be your target for that buffer, right? So those are 2 suggestions for you.
And those are great. That's something I think people can immediately think about and start. No one wants to think about their relationship with money, but
I know.
But at the same time, the reason I had you on and kind of timed it for this time of year is that it's ideal. Like everyone's talking about their tax refund and they get all excited, right, or they get, oh gosh, I've got to owe taxes. It's very emotional time of year around.
Right. Yeah.
And by having a couple solutions to at least gain some control, there's hope. There's hope to turn it around.
So much hope. There is so much hope. Now, you're absolutely right. What's really interesting is that this year, this tax season has been particularly odd because for a lot of people, they're not getting the refunds that they usually expect.
Yeah.
There's been some upheavals in the tax laws. And so there are a lot of people, most people are getting less refunds than they expect.
Yeah.
And that can bring up a lot of emotions as well, because you thought you were going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And maybe now you can only do X, Y, maybe only X,
Yeah.
And so, this year in particular, I think is really moving a lot of people to think about how they deal with their money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And not being able to write off, what they were used to writing off, or all of those things. I know people have been really cranky that I've talked to because they're like, wait a second.
Yeah, exactly.
And as business owners, I find that it's especially smaller business owners that are just getting off the ground or whatnot. It's rough because typically you don't make money back. Right. Typically you're owing something unless you've paid out that buffer, quarterly or something. And so that's something that I know has always been a stressor for me, is making sure I have that account and I stuff all that money away, and I just get really paranoid about it until I write the check and send it off.
Absolutely right. And that's a hugely important habit for people to get into. Even if people don't do the buffer, finding a way of every time you get a check from a client or get money in from a client or whatever it is, however you make money, as a small business owner, take some of it out. Even if it's not the total amount that you think you might need, get started with that habit of saving for your taxes, because you'll be able to increase it over time.
Oh, absolutely. So, okay, well, in the description of this video, we will have a link to connect with you. And we had talked about, some stuff you have to offer as well. So how can people connect with you if this is something they're interested in, maybe having that conversation, so they can maybe get a little bit more on track with their relationship with money?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm offering a 1-hour complimentary money empowerment session. So all of the things we've talked about here, you can actually get kind of a first look, and it's very personalized look at, we'll dig into your old money stories and understand your goals and really try and figure out how to tie the current money stories to what your goals are, and get you some first steps. So you'll come out of every one of those. You'll come out of that 1-hour session with at least 2 or 3 recommendations for those first steps. how can you really start healing your relationship with money. You can also go on my website and sign up for my newsletter. I have kind of every 2 weeks, I have a newsletter that goes out that has tips about money or has my thoughts on the current money situation. So, yeah.
Those are great. Those are great. And I'm on your e-newsletter, and I love seeing that because it is
Yay!
something that you provide a lot of value, and but it's in bite sizes, which is what I think most people need, is that little bite so they can go, okay, I can do that, or
exactly.
that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge with us. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, for those of you watching, check out Cecilia's website, sign up for her newsletter, and take advantage of that offer. That is a very generous offer, and I think that if you're on the fence and you're not, and you know you need to be doing something different, you should take the step to do it, and just, as I always say, rip the Band-Aid off and start making some changes. So, well, goodbye to everyone, and we will see you next time.